Hey everybody, it's your boy. I'm here doing a video. I'm not sure why yet, but I thought I'd try something new. And I'm actually going to, for those of you who don't know and who can't see, I read comic books sometimes. And I thought I would just spend some time making videos talking about and sort of reviewing the books that I do read. I'm talking about characters, story, art, that sort of thing. But I thought before I launch into that, it might be good to, first of all, explain what I read and sort of understand comics a little bit better. So I actually read a type of comic called an omnibus. And what it is, it's one of these big, sort of thick, heavy-set books, right? They're probably about maybe a foot tall even, maybe just under that. But basically what they are a collection of lots of single issues. So when I say single issue, I'm talking about something like this, okay? And this is probably the sorts of comic books that a lot of people would be familiar with. These are called floppies, single issues. And they're about 20 pages long, 20 to 25, and they collect part of the story. If you put a bunch of them together, usually it's at least 6. You get something called a trade paperback, which is the same size as the single issues, but they're thicker because they collect a bunch of them in a row, a more holistic story. As you can see, with the omnibus, not only does it collect more than the trade paperback by quite a bit, it's also taller, okay, and wider. So it's generally bigger. And I think that's something that matters in a form such as the comic, because comic books are 50% writing, but also 50% illustrations, right, the art. And I think having access to this oversized, which is what it's called, the oversized editions of the comic books, it really does sort of change the reading experience. One thing about, so some of the downsides to these are more expensive slightly than collecting trade paperbacks especially. Single issues would come out every month. Trade paperback would come out maybe a couple a year for the one series, because you need to have all the issues out for a trade paperback to come out. Omnis get very scattered releases, and once they are released, it's a limited printing, so it's not something that's printed evergreen, with a few exceptions. So that's basically what an omnibus is. It's an oversized hardcover. That's a bad example. Hardcover collection of a single. Most of the time, it's a single run of comics. Unfortunately, it gets a bit more complicated. Marvel and DC are pretty good because they have omnis the same size. Okay, so they vary in thickness, sure, but they're the same height and the same width, all of them. But you can get other, for example, let me just get this here. You can get other companies. So this is another comic company called Image, I believe. Yep. And this is their omnibus, and you can see it's a lot bigger than the Marvel one, and it is also slightly wider as well. Okay, that's great for this story itself, it does mean there's a bit of a mismatch on the shelf. You get omnibuses, different sizes from different companies, but Marvel and DC are pretty stock standard. Marvel's the king of the omnibus, by the way. DC is struggling a bit, but as you can see, Marvel does quite a bit. You have this other type of... Actually, we'll stick with the other companies for now. You can also get... so this is Boom Studios. And they are slightly taller than the Omnibus. And but around the same size. Yeah, but slightly taller. This isn't actually called an Omnibus. This is just called the Deluxe Edition. Okay, so across the companies, there's not really a uniform sort of name, but they have the same purpose, and it's basically Boom Studios' version. Again, another company. This one's called IDW. They do Ninja Turtle stuff, which is great. And yeah, so these are the same height as an Omnibus. They are just a smidge shorter, not shorter, but not as wide. But they also these ones, which are just called the IDW collection, they do tend to be thinner and don't collect as much. So this is more halfway between the trade paperbacks and the Omnis. But this is still hardcover, and that's something all of these will have in common. One of the last ones we have is what we call a compendium. Okay, so this is Image again, same as this absolute beast of an Omnibus. Okay, so same company, but it's a different format of collected edition. So what this is, it's about the same size as the trade paperbacks. So the big difference is this is basically a hardcover trade paperback, but a lot thicker, which covers sort of the amount of an Omnibus. So again, it's sort of halfway in between, but just a different in a different way. Yeah, and that's sort of how thick it is. So this one is actually a bit thicker than this, ever so slightly. But then again, Marvel does use thinner paper, which is it makes a difference when you stack 1,000 pieces of paper together. So I would say, even though this is thicker, this has more pages. And I think the last thing I want to touch on is, where are we? Here. There are these absolute monsters, right? So what this is called an absolute. I don't think Marvel does absolutes. DC does quite a few. And I think Vertigo does as well. But basically what this is, it's Omnibus on steroids. Okay, so they would collect... Oh, sorry. Also, this is just a slipcase. So most Omnis, all the Marvel and DC omnibuses come with a dust jacket, which you can take off. Right? These absolutes, they come in slipcases. So that's just a box. And then you get this. So these absolutes are thinner than an omnibus. So for example, this Sandman series, there are 5 absolutes and 3 omnis. So it's spread out a bit more. But they are a lot bigger, as you can see, both in height and width. And they're also just higher quality as well. So you have some embossed design here. Yeah, and this is leather bound as well. Yeah, it's just a high quality book, but overall more expensive than the omnibus. Yeah, so those are the types of comic books that there are. I am mainly an omnibus collector, so most of the things on my shelf are these, unless they don't come in this format. So for example, a lot of you can't see them there, but a lot of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff, as well as the Power Ranger stuff, doesn't come in this format. And sometimes for certain books, like the Sandman books, I would get them absolute. But mainly I am, an omnibus collector. And that's sort of, I'll be going through these books as I read them. Things that I'll hit on when I'm talking about these books is the content, so what's collected in them, and sort of what that entails. The writing and the narrative. I like to use terms like micro writing and macro writing. So micro writing is sort of the dialogue, the sort of panel to panel and page to page writing, while the macro writing is the overall story, the narrative, if that makes sense. And I hope that starts to make sense in different videos. I'll also be talking about character, so characters that are in the books, the way they develop, whether that's compelling or not. I'll be talking about the art as well. Just a warning, when it comes to art, I'm not really that picky. I think most art is fine, and even if I don't think so initially, I tend to settle in as I read. And that's another bonus of these bigger books. You have more time to settle in all at once. I'll also be talking about accessibility. So whether it's easy to just pick up and read, some things you might need to know beforehand, what kinds of people might be able to read this well. I think now socially we'll have at least some idea of Marvel or DC superheroes and that sort of thing. So talking about how similar that might be to the movies, basically what types of people would be able to read this, and whether it's accessible or to what extent it's not as accessible. I think that's all I wanted to talk about right now. I will be kicking off this series, and we'll see if it lasts, with a Batman book, and then this Spider-Man book, and then probably volume 2 of this. Okay, so that's something to look forward to, for me at least. And I hope everybody enjoyed this. And if anything I said doesn't quite make sense, feel free to just reach out. If you're watching this, you probably know me. I'm happy to explain things. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.